Sometimes to save democracy, you gotta destroy democracy. Welcome to America Uncovered, I'm Chris Chappell. So real quick, I've been hearing from a lot of you that YouTube is secretly unsubscribing people. That's why this channel isn't growing so much. So do me a favor, if you like this show, subscribe. And if you already have, make sure you're still subscribed. I want to make it to 600,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Now, on with the show. President Biden wants to save American democracy from the likes of Donald Trump and conservative Supreme Court justices. And to do it, Biden announced what he calls a bold plan to reform the Supreme Court and ensure no president is above the law. It warns that the Supreme Court has overturned long-established legal precedents protecting fundamental rights. Of course, knowing full well that no one reads whitehouse.gov, Biden also published a Washington Post opinion piece on the same thing. You see, the Supreme Court has recently made some rulings that Biden and Democrats simply don't like, such as its ruling on Roe v. Wade and abortion, its ruling against affirmative action, and its ruling on presidential immunity. The Supreme Court also happened to get in the way of the Biden administration's agendas on things like gun control, immigration, student loans, COVID vaccine mandates, climate change, and more. Darn those pesky checks and balances. Did I say checks and balances? I mean Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices and they've ruined democracy by making the court conservative instead of liberal. So Biden plans to reform the Supreme Court with 3 proposals. No immunity for crimes a president committed in office, term limits for Supreme Court justices, and a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. For the presidential immunity issue, that's too big to go into in this episode. So check out this recent video about that Supreme Court ruling and why some people think Trump can freely murder people now. I'll leave a link below. Now for term limits, Supreme Court justices have always been appointed for life. And Republicans want to keep it that way. There's more than one way they're pro-life. Biden, however, argues that a U.S. president should appoint a justice every 2 years for 18-year terms. In other words, 2 justice appointees per presidential term. There's also the proposed code of conduct that has justices disclosing gifts, refraining from political activity, and recusing themselves in conflicts of interest. That's been a huge point of controversy recently. According to a recent report by the nonprofit Fix the Court, over the past 20 years, Supreme Court justices have received $3 million in gifts. But what would the effect of this bold plan actually be? Well, Biden frames his proposal as a way to prevent abuse of presidential power, restore faith in the judicial system, and strengthen the guardrails of democracy. Ah, the guardrails of democracy. This from a guy who got forced out of the presidential campaign by his own party. Also, if only there had been some kind of group of founding fathers who created a system of checks and balances to strengthen the guardrails of democracy. Anyway, Biden also proposes it as a way to rein in an extreme Supreme Court.
I believe the best structure is the 18-year term limit. That would help ensure the country would not have what it has now. An extreme court that's the product of an attack on the confirmation process that's been weaponized by those seeking to carry out an extreme agenda for decades to come.
Of course, when liberal judges dominated the court, that wasn't extreme. Republicans, surprise, surprise, are opposed to Biden's proposals. House Speaker Mike Johnson called the proposal a dangerous gambit that would be dead on arrival in the House. So chances are the proposal won't go anywhere. The problem is, Biden's Supreme Court reforms are unconstitutional. And that's according to a bipartisan commission Biden established himself to propose Supreme Court reforms back when he first came into office. They came out with this report in 2021. And according to Adam White, one of the members of the commission, imposing term limits by statute would be unconstitutional. Not only that, but nothing in the report actually recommended anything that the president is now proposing. So how did Biden come up with it if his own commission didn't? Surely it wasn't put together by the same shadowy oligarchy within the Democratic Party that ousted Biden from the presidential race and anointed Harris as their presidential candidate, a party that's upset they can't control the decisions of the Supreme Court. The Founding Fathers intended the Supreme Court justices to have life tenure as a way to make them as independent from politics as possible. Founding Father Alexander Hamilton said that the independence of judges is necessary to guard the U.S. Constitution and the rights of individuals. The arrangement ensures the Supreme Court's freedom from political pressures. It protects them from potential retribution for unpopular decisions. Roe v. Wade. It also allows justices to focus solely on interpreting the law based on constitutional principles, checks and balances, which is another problem if Biden's proposal was actually put into practice. It could grant the president even more power. Like I said before, Biden wants every president to be able to appoint 2 justices per presidential term. But don't forget that the U.S. Constitution requires the president to seek Senate advice and consent before appointing a judge. But given how the Senate can and often does refuse to confirm Supreme Court nominations, Merrick Garland, a president could theoretically just bypass the Senate in order to guarantee 2 justices per term. And should Trump win the next election, I very much imagine that's something Democrats would not want. There's a reason it's so hard to change the Constitution. It's so America doesn't change based on the political whims of the day. It's a strength, not a weakness. One that no president should try to upend to win points. Now, if you like America Uncovered's nonpartisan take on news and politics, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you find yourself drowning in a sea of cat videos and sourdough tutorials, don't panic. YouTube has tossed you a life raft of recommendations, freshly pumped with content you might actually want to watch. Come on, grab hold. Your brain cells will thank you. Just click here. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.